Your utility company has gone through a gradual change over the last 10 years. They used to focus on providing electric service. Now, they focus on spying on your personal life by monitoring your electricity consumption. Because these changes were gradual and because the utilities have generated a lot of propaganda and misinformation, the public does not generally have a clear idea about what has taken place. This video is to clear that up and help people understand that utility companies are systematically committing crimes against every customer on a daily basis. In fact, technology is generally being structured for social control, and we need to do something about that. Originally, utility companies were a public service. They generated electric power and sold it to the public. That was their business model. As we know, those utilities have lobbied for privileged status as government-protected monopolies. In return for granting them monopolies, government gave itself the power to regulate the utilities. It turns out that government does a very poor job of regulating utilities. So the monopoly status allowed the utilities to raise rates and impose their own policies and leap without restraint into becoming unlawful mass surveillance operations for the benefit of government and large corporations. In the 1990s and before, the utility meter on the side of your house and business was designed to collect your gross power usage and show a number that represented your monthly consumption on which your bill would be calculated. Somewhere in the late 1900s, the utilities realized that new digital technologies made it possible to replace that meter on your house or office with a sophisticated and complex surveillance system, which could gather highly personal surveillance data from the places you live and work. By monitoring and analyzing the minute-to-minute power consumption of a location, a digital utility meter could identify when every electrical device was turned on and off, what that device was. It could make a record of all activities at the location, and then computer algorithms could calculate, model, and project highly revealing information about the lifestyles, personalities, and psychology and habits of the occupants. They discovered that this kind of surveillance could reveal the occupants' sexual activities, political preferences, drug and alcohol addictions, various kinds of illegal activity, and a wide range of abnormal and suspicious behaviors. This is possible today, but ongoing, the data analysis will be refined and exploited in ways we have never imagined. This is a highly invasive surveillance program, like never before even possible, to be conducted on every structure that uses electricity from a centralized utility company. The occupants of those structures and the utility customers generally were not asked for their permission for this, or even told they were being spied on. The utility company would simply send a technician to replace the utility meter, and the technician would not disclose anything to the customer about what the new digital meter would or could be doing. The utility invested huge amounts of money to install head-end data storage and processing to amplify the data to highly valuable discrete personal profiles on each of their customers' families and occupants so that the personal data could be exploited on the open market in various schemes in the larger industry that is known as the big data gold rush, which refers to the practice of collecting deeply personal information on identifiable parties on a mass scale and delivering it to agencies who can commercially exploit that data. With that surveillance data, law enforcement can unlawfully obtain private and personal information without a warrant. Tax collectors can find out what they believe is taxable activity that they could not find any other way. Banks and lenders can have personal information far beyond what previous credit and background checks would produce. Insurance companies could access health and lifestyle information in granular detail. And of course, with this data, marketers could hit you with the thing you are most likely to spend money on at the instant you are most likely to spend money. In other words, your life is now being stored, watched, and traded in high detail and high magnification by distant strangers and institutions which have only begun to develop ways to exploit you with that information. Utility customers who questioned the new meters being installed on their homes were greeted with hostility, threats, and lies by the utility company staff. Those utility customers who demanded safe and lawful meters were penalized, and their electric service was, in many cases, shut off. The utility companies began to boast at industry conferences that their new digital metering systems would more than double the revenue of utility companies because they would now have massive databases of highly personal, sensitive, and timely information on all their customers, which they could compile, organize, and sell to corporations, government agencies, and private individuals who wish to exploit that data in one way or another. The installation of a digital meter, especially the new ones called AMI meters, represented illegal surveillance under the Fourth Amendment of the Bill of Rights and under many federal and state statutes prohibiting personal surveillance against private citizens. Our justice system has so far completely overlooked the violation this represents, as if the justice system only exists to prosecute your crimes and never certain crimes of large corporations. The new digital utility meters are far more invasive than if they put a camera in your home and strangers watched you in your living room or bedroom. The reason it is more invasive than that is that this data shows what is going on in every room of your house, every minute of the day, and can be used to develop deep psychological and lifestyle profiles on the occupants. And that highly personal and revealing data is analyzed and shared with people who can do great harm to all of us who are being spied on. And this data allows real-time behavioral control, where you can be directed to something as soon as you walk into a building. You can be guided to some action before you realize you're being guided. They know where you are, when you are there, and what they want you to do when you are there. It's now commonplace when we visit certain stores to have our phones indicate at that moment some awareness that we are there. It has taken over 10 years to build out the infrastructure of this mass surveillance and control grid, and it will take more years for it to be fully functional. But as algorithms are refined and the data is combined with your cell phone data, credit card usage, email and browsing data, countless other records collected from your personal activities, the concept of even the slightest privacy is being completely destroyed as an option for the average person. Government agencies and corporations can now determine what you were doing at any time of any day for the past 5 or 10 years, something that a person with even the most spectacular memory could not do for themselves. With this data, they could find evidence to warrant police raids on probably half the homes and businesses in the country. And interestingly, during the first 20 years of this century, the incidence of violent police raids on private homes has multiplied more than 10 times. The number of SWAT teams in existence has multiplied more than 10 times. The number of unlawful raids, wrong address invasions, and killings of innocent people by police in those raids has multiplied 10 times. But much of what they know about you has not yet been exploited. If they did exploit this data, most people would feel the surveillance much more painfully. We would throw away our cell phones and take measures to defeat the surveillance from smart meters, which, by the way, can be done by simply installing one or more electric line conditioners. More information about that is at EMF Help Center. But they cannot fully exploit that big data until we are all hopelessly dependent on technology and our electric gadgets, where we are so deeply embedded in the mass surveillance and so conditioned to using the technological conveniences that we think we are unable to stop using our devices. They are already telling us that traditional electromechanical utility meters are no longer available. They are already requiring us to use our cell phones to verify our participation in various activities, transactions, programs, and for entry to certain locations. And we're already becoming so dependent on our cell phones that we feel we are unable to discard them. Our personal lifestyles are already highly dependent on digital technologies, and this is going to become more so in the future if we let that happen. So very soon, if the people running this big data system have their way, those of us who do not have cell phones will not be able to enter buildings, exchange money in transactions, use transportation, or engage in many of the necessary functions of commercial society. And as in China, our cell phones may start telling us if we are in the company of someone the government does not approve of. Using cash will become harder. We will be discouraged from having personal meetings, and we will be encouraged to have our meetings on digital telecom services where all contents of those meetings become part of the data set. We will be conditioned to accept tracking and monitoring of all of our travels and activities, and the Internet of Things will bring all that data to central points for processing and distribution to the agencies which will use that data against us in ways we cannot currently imagine. That is what the future holds, where our personal data will be used to pull a tighter and tighter noose around our necks until we are hog-bound over the fire. That will be the time that we will be easily and totally controlled in every aspect of our lives. And if some people who are in power happen to wish to depopulate, we will be depopulated, and there will be little we can do to avoid that. We will feel control of what we do, what we buy, what taxes we pay, who we associate with, what we do to earn a living, what government and corporate offices we must answer to, what we may say on social media, on our phones, in our messages, and ultimately what we think as we self-censor to comply with the controls that are announced to us on our digital devices and broadcast to us through our news and entertainment. Just as we have been hearing endless media messages about wearing masks and social distancing, we will be told every minute of every day what we may do and not do, what we may and may not think, how we may and may not behave. We will be told how much money has been removed from our bank accounts by our cell phones because of our actions that we may not have realized at the time would cost us money. And all of that control will be designed to make others rich and powerful and to make us comply with the endless demands, commands, and dictates of the digital system that is, at this very moment, assembling itself all around us. The key word in this brave new world is dependency. Your dependency on technology, gadgets, and systems which you cannot control and cannot live without. How you became independent on gadgets that do things for you, think for you, remind you of things, pay your bills, monitor your affairs. Every small step of dependency on these things that you allow yourself will be one more step toward control someone else will have over you. Your dependency, acceptance, and usage of these new technologies are the key elements in the emerging digital and technological control matrix. This is the purpose of the Internet of Things, to have 24/7 monitoring of you as a discrete identity and thereby as an object of control. You don't have to sign up. It is coming to you. It will find you. It already knows where you are. It knows what you're doing. It knows what you like and don't like. It knows what you are afraid of. It knows how to twist your mind in any way it wishes. If you are afraid of disease, it will use the threat of disease to control you. If you are afraid of punishment, it will use punishment to control you. If you are afraid of standing out, it will tell you how to fit in. It knows exactly who and what you are, and it knows how to tailor your world and maximize your addiction and compliance. That is what big data is, mass surveillance is. And we are allowing that surveillance and control structure to creep into every corner of our lives. This change has been gradual enough that most of us are not seeing it happen, especially young people who don't see or feel the change. How do we wake up and deal with it? We ask ourselves, what am I dependent on? What technology am I using but not really controlling? What am I using that is online and generating records and data for someone else? Am I letting people know things about me that I don't know about them? Am I doing things to walk into a trap of surveillance, compliance, taxation, debt, obligation, and control of my personal life and behavior? Do these technological conveniences help me determine my life or help someone else determine my life, my activities, my thoughts? Our mainstream media used to bring us information. Now media is mainly trying to control our behavior, tell us lies, keep us ignorant, compliant, and most of all, addicted to the technology. The entertainment is becoming irresistible. And every minute we spend being entertained is a minute we are not planning and controlling our own lives. Every minute we spend on a video game is a minute we are not spending on the game of life, real life. If we consume entertainment a lot of the time, we are losing our grip on our own lives and futures. We are not steering the ship. We no longer have any objective, neutral information sources. We are in a time of mass censorship and indoctrination. All of the mainstream media is now devoted to that. Mainstream media has become so thoroughly controlled that the average person may be better off now if they never even see mainstream media at all. Because as long as we are consuming media, it is nearly impossible to take command of our lives. Just as corporations and governments are collecting more and more detailed information about you, they are censoring more and more useful information that we need. So that again, we will become even more dependent, more ignorant, more unable to disconnect ourselves from the control matrix. Those of us who don't want to be controlled, enslaved, exploited, and constantly monitored will have to find ways to become independent in a world that is more and more imposing dependency upon us. Independence is starting to look more like radical hacker and prepper behavior, because that is what we are being forced to do to keep any semblance of self-determination or privacy. Never be afraid or ashamed to be independent, self-reliant, learning basic skills, finding ways to make do without technology or using technology to your own advantage. In the near future, that independency and those skills will be critical to your freedom and perhaps your survival.
This video is sponsored by EMFHelpCenter.com, providing real solutions to electromagnetic radiation and the biological consequences of that radiation. As more and more wireless systems and devices saturate our living environments, and as more and more of us become electromagnetic sensitive and injured, EMFHelpCenter.com brings critical, updated information and solutions to you. If your health is suffering for no apparent reason, radio frequencies and electric fields may be playing a role in that. You will find answers, solutions, and empowerment at EMFHelpCenter.com.